Hi, I'm Gabi. I'm a graphic design major.
Hi, I'm Cailin and I'm an animation and digital media major.
Hi, I'm Sarah and I'm a construction management major.
After the First World War, dramatic advances in technology occurred. Some examples include the machine age, new types of weapons, and new methods of communication. In addition, art and design are affected by these advances. Art and design in the 20th century is used as a tool to express and define identity, express these rapid changes that people face, and challenge totalitarian government. When people feel powerless, many turned to art as a form of expression.
In our film, we will focus on the following periods in European history: Jews during World War II, the Czechs and East Berliners during communism, and the fall of the wall. Without the advancing of technology, people would not have been able to express themselves or to have a creative escape, making it nearly impossible to live through their reality.
After World War I, Germany was punished quite badly by the Treaty of Versailles. Feeling hurt, Germans were looking for a source of hope, and therefore turned to Hitler and embraced nationalism. Hitler's fascist nationalism used anti-Semitism so that way he could create the ideal image of a German, the Aryan race. The Jews were interned, murdered, or deported. In addition to the Jews, the Nazis attacked communists, homosexuals, and the disabled. This dark mark in history led some to turn to art to reclaim their identities. Clothing and home goods such as silver, pottery, and tapestries are other art forms that became popular because of advances in technology. Leading up to World War II, when anti-Semitism was rising, Jewish department stores created beautiful works of art and home goods to lure people to their stores despite anti-Semitic feelings. These Jews started modernism as they invented many fashion trends and created new home goods people just had to have to live a better life. On the night of broken glass, Jewish storefronts were demolished and shops were ransacked. At the same time, Jews were also taken away to concentration and death camps, proving that it was no longer safe for the remaining Jews to keep running their shops.
Art transformed during the wars and after. In World War II, Germany's government was in control of the media and used propaganda as a form of control. Propaganda is misleading or biased information used to promote a point of view. Hitler hired artists to create propaganda posters, films, and political cartoons to distribute their ideas, advance their political movement, and to define and control the Nazi Party's image. In Germany, Hitler used fundamental elements and principles of graphic design, including scale, color, light, movement, and symbol, to engage the public and create a memorable experience. His graphic design team was called Department V. Typographers, graphic designers, and artists were told to reject modern styles and use regressional representational styles in their works that idealized the leadership of the Nazi Party. If an artist didn't follow the rules, he would face imprisonment. Such extremes were taken that the Berlin Bauhaus, where many Jewish artists had taught and studied, closed down in 1933 due to the Nazi arts policy. The Bauhaus had very advanced ideas for design for its time, and its artists produced wonderful works of art, furniture, architecture, and other forms of design. The institution set standards for how design should be taught that are still used today. Propaganda could also be used to evoke fear or trick someone into thinking something is one thing when it's actually something else. We saw examples of this at Terezin concentration camp, located 50 miles outside of Prague. The Nazis created a film to make the Red Cross and other outside organizations and governments believe that nothing's wrong and the Jews were being treated well. In the films, the interned Jews at the camps were actors forced to portray the camp as a happy community. However, most of the Jewish people involved in making this film were shipped to Auschwitz. For those who survived or stayed in Terezin, people used painting, drawing, music, literature, and theater to express themselves despite the horrible conditions they experienced. In 1981, Leo Haas, a prisoner at Terezin, stated, "It is clear that we should not only use the material that we put at our disposal for that purpose, so we marched around drawing whatever we regarded as notable. I did it because it was what I felt I should do." In all camps, created witness testimony, and to some extent creative evidence. I almost never thought I was making art. I just wanted to create pieces for the prosecution.
After World War II, many Eastern Europeans welcomed communism. According to Chapter 6 of Cities of Imagination, Prague, the author argues that it should be recalled that Czechoslovakia, unlike other future communist states in Central Europe and the Balkans, had a substantial and legal communist party before 1939, and that, in the election of 1946, the party had obtained 40% of the vote in Bohemia and Moravia and 30% in Slovakia. So although many people in Czechoslovakia favored a form of communism, they did not like the Soviets' form. Many people felt very oppressed in Berlin and Czechoslovakia because the Soviets stripped many freedoms from the people, such as the freedom to express political opinions. During and after the communist reign in East Germany and the Czech Republic, graffiti art became a way the oppressed expressed themselves. People living under communist rule did not have access to technology or media except for what their government would allow them to see. People were also severely punished if they spoke out against the government in any way. However, some people rebelled and started the graffiti movement in cases like the Lenin Wall in Prague and the Berlin Wall in Germany. Because of immense fear of the government in Eastern Germany, graffiti was much more prevalent in the West, where people had much more freedom. However, because people were getting tired of the restricting rules in Prague, people rebelled and started the Lenin Wall as a way of defying the government and spreading their hopes for freedom and a peaceful life. Painting on these walls was illegal in the Czech Republic, but people needed to get their feelings out by means of self-expression, even if it meant being sent to jail. With the advent of the camera, photography influenced painting and the fine arts. This invention introduced an entire new art form for artists to express themselves and allowed painters to become more creative and whimsical. This changed the way art was seen and created for years to come. Photography and later film allowed people to see things through other people's point of view in a way that could be manipulated to make people feel a certain way.
After the Industrial Revolutions in Europe, architecture changes in many ways. In the 19th century, Vienna's architecture consists of a wide variety of architectural styles due to the melting pot of different cultures and people coming together. The latest construction methods were of course used, however, because Viennese people tended to be wary of change, including during their very managed nonviolent revolution. Architectural styles were usually borrowed and only slightly changed to fit the times. Examples are the Parliament building in an antique classical style to represent democracy, the University in a neo-Renaissance style to represent learning and knowledge, and Rathaus in neo-Gothic style. However, communism ushers in uniformity and uses cheap materials. This created an inexpensive but short-term solution to housing for the communist government. Later on, after the fall of communism, these buildings needed to be renovated and to be reused and more inviting. As time went on, and after the fall of the Soviet Union and communism, advancements in materials and building methods allowed architects to be more creative in their designs. Frank Gehry, an American architect, created the Dancing House located in Prague. Its play on materials and abnormality makes it a revolutionary design and a huge landmark today. The Jewish Museum in Berlin consists of two buildings. The first is of traditional Baroque style, similar to the norm of the era. The second is a strong and abstract design. Both the Dancing House and this building are classified as deconstructionist style. Deconstructionism became popular in the 1980s and manipulates the structured surface and creates non-rectilinear shapes. This construction was made possible through the computer-aided design programs, otherwise known as CAD. Architect Daniel Libeskind designed the Jewish Museum to represent the experiences Jews went through during the Holocaust and Communist era. Libeskind says he created empty spaces in several parts of the buildings. These so-called voids extend vertically through the entire sum and represent the absence of the Jews from the German society. The building has no internal flow. Everyone in the Holocaust has a different experience, so Libeskind wanted everyone walking through to have a different experience as well. Even if you walked through twice, you would have a totally different experience than the first time you walked through. CAD and new building materials let architects become artists and tell a personal story through their designs.
Music and mass communication evolved because of new changes in technologies. Earlier on in the 19th century Vienna, aristocrats and upper bourgeoisie hired musicians for private events. As time progressed, access to media became easier. Radios were used to widely distribute propaganda through broadcasts. Soon after, music was being censored and the governments played only what they found to be appropriate. Another art form that advanced in new ways in the 20th century was literature. While some people still hand-wrote their writings, some began to use a typewriter to capture their thoughts. Throughout time, this technology evolved into the computers we use today. After World War II, in the communist nations, there was very heavy censorship on literature content. When we visited Prague, we visited a library called Libri Prohibiti. Here they had samizdat literature, which were collections of books that were prohibited or published illegally because of communist restrictions. Because authors and writers were not allowed to publish any sensitive topics due to the communist censorship, books began to be mass-produced underground with the help of the typewriter. They were printed, up to 15 at a time, by the use of carbon paper. The pages were thin for a more compact and smaller book, easier to hide and carry around. The ability technology gave these people was huge in the communist era, when writers and their audience needed a creative escape from the harsh reality they lived in. Another major contributor to the literature was Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. Releasing his first book in 1891, he redefined the idea of identity, particularly with his theory of infantile forms of sexuality and the meaning of life. His theories were very technologically advanced for the times and brought an enormous amount of progress in how people were treated for psychological conditions and for how people viewed life. His works continue to be studied today. Film and television progressed in multiple ways throughout the century. Cameras and film were improved to allow color to emerge from what used to be a black and white depiction of the world. Technology also advanced in ways that provided faster, more convenient methods of gaining news and communicating. As history continues, technology has become more readily available and accessible to people on a daily basis. In the early 1980s, MTV emerged and gave a whole new way of viewing media. When it began, it focused on playing music videos 24 hours a day. Many artists packaged news and current events into their songs and videos, which provided a new outlook for the young adult audience. The rise of the information age provided new sources for people to communicate. According to The Guardian, in early November 1989, executives from MTV found themselves in Berlin for a seminar. Noticing the momentum for change, Bill Rohde, now MTV's chief executive, decided to expand access to the channel in East Berlin. By November 7th, MTV had succeeded in giving hotels and conference centers access to the channel for the first time. 2 days later, the Berlin Wall fell. Following the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the people of East Germany were exposed to years of technological advances that were sometimes overwhelming. They had to find a way to adapt to over 20 years of advances that were happening in their backyard.
Technology continues to play a vital role in people's lives. People use art and design as a form of self-expression. For many, it was a form of survival during the difficult times of 20th century Europe. Without advances in technology yielding new art forms and styles, there would not be the accurate representation of history through archived art that exists now.
Technology will continue to evolve and help shape our future as we continue to have the need to share our voice.
Today we are surrounded by all kinds of technologies that are affecting the way we live.
We continue to create new forms of art made possible by these technologies to express ourselves and our feelings and concerns about current events.